One of the errors that people make in enrollment conversations is when the prospect says no, they make them wrong for it.
Yeah.
When the prospect ghosts them, they make them wrong. When the prospect says yes but doesn't follow through, they make them wrong. There's this need to self-protect that shows up by making the other person wrong. Well, what if they don't need to be wrong? It's okay. A certain person are not ready. Even if we know they're the perfect fit and we're the perfect solution, they're not ready.
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I am super excited. I've got an amazing woman here that I met quite a while ago, and I'm super excited to have a bit of a chat with you, Vanessa, about who you are, what you do, and what really matters to you, and get a little bit of an undercovered experience about your magic, what you've been through in life. So welcome, Vanessa Horn, to Uncovered. Thanks for jumping on with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you. I love the name and the premise for your podcast.
Yeah. So, our whole goal is to actually, we want to know what's underneath you as opposed to what you do. I think this is more important, finding out what really makes people tick. And you've got an amazing story, Vanessa. So give us a little bit of a backstory about who you are and what you do, and what you're about now.
So I'll start with what I'm about now and then kind of go backwards and start with what led to that. So what I'm about now is sales, high ticket sales. So I have a passion for empowering individuals around sales because as entrepreneurs, and frankly, anybody needs sales. Like if they're going to negotiate a position or they're going to sell an idea, or if there's even fundraisers, or I've come from a background where people did missions trips. They had to raise money. That's enrolling. That's in getting people enrolled into a vision. And it's such a powerful skill set to have. And underneath it, it stirs up all of our issues because it shows up our worthiness issues. It stirs up our visibility, stirs up our issues. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put myself out there. We feel when we're selling our own services, we can feel rejection because we're so attached to the body of work. And we can, even if we can wrap our head, and then there's this like head stuff that happens, like I shouldn't charge for this. Okay, I'm going to charge for this, but then we charge and we collect the funds and we overgive. These are all the kinds of things that are underneath the surface of the work that I get to do around sales, high ticket sales. So I teach sales, and I also have a sales agency that sells for high ticket coaches and consultants. So I'll train sales organizations and place them in coaching and consulting organizations, which is where you and I met, because I sell for Taki Moore and Black Belt, and that's where I had the honor of meeting you. But what led me to that position, frankly, I've been an entrepreneur for, I'm going to be dating myself here, but since I had my firstborn, who's now 18 and just left to college. And along that journey of building and selling businesses, the through line of all of it was that I was supported by amazing mentors to learn sales. And several years ago, I launched a coaching business. I've had a coaching business since 2011, but about 2016, I had a severe health crash. I burned out completely. And part of it was trying to take care of all of my clients' businesses as if they were my baby businesses. Like if they just felt like a bunch of little birds, and I had to feed them and keep them alive while meanwhile trying to keep my own business alive. And I overextended myself in doing that. And I suffered from a severe adrenal crash. It was September 30th, 2016. I'm sitting at a hotel. I'm at a conference, a coaching conference, and I'm in my room and I have zero energy to go back in the room. I don't want to see a soul. I don't want to get out of bed. For the first time ever in my life, I didn't have energy and drive and purpose. And I remember thinking, oh my God, willpower cannot overcome this. What is going on? And from that, I had a successful coaching business. At the time, I was doing about $60,000 a month. And because of that health crash, I was stuck in bed for about 4 months. And my income dropped to $7,000 a month. Now that's really low when you consider that my overhead was about $25,000 a month, and I was running ads to the tune of about $100,000 a year. And so I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. I have to make some tough decisions. And so part of what led me into sales was, how can I cover my salary while rebuilding my coaching and being able to pay my team? And that's when Taki was the first person, having been a former client of his. He had a position for a coach. I applied. I was one of the 2 finalists. He went to ask me if I really wanted the position, and I was like, nope, it's full time. But if you ever want somebody to do sales, I'd love to. And my idea was, I'll just do this on the side while I keep my coaching business going. But as that was an amazing experience because I was able to step in. At first, they were uncertain. I was like, listen, I'll do it for free. Like, I will earn my year's salary. Don't pay me a dime until I earn my whole year's salary. And when I did, they were like, all right, come on board. It wasn't that long. And from there, I just had more and more demand of people saying, like, can you do this for me? Or is there somebody I can hire to do this? And so instead of coaching around sales, I just transitioned to running a sales agency and helping to place more and more of these salespeople instead of just teaching sales.
I love that. And listeners, the thing that's really, really interesting for me is that I've experienced Vanessa, right? And I've been on sales calls where people have tried to frighten me into buying. And this is a really old school way of approaching. And then I met you, and you were one of the first or second experiences that I had where I chose a yes. And the yes, I chose to join Black Belt because of you, Vanessa. And it's the way you did it. It's just humbled. Like it was so not selling. It was offering a service to see whether it would be a fit, to see if we could actually, Black Belt could actually help me. And I'm so grateful that I joined, because I changed everything the way that I do. I created our academy based on all the frameworks that Black Belt gave me. So I'm so grateful to you, first and foremost, because I would never have joined. Because when I look at buying something, I don't know about you listeners, but what I do is I look for the person, and I want to know that the person at the front is actually going to be what I'm going to be getting in the back end. And then I met Taki, just a really amazing, full of energy guy, no head up his ass syndrome, just wants to help people. And I was like, oh my God, these people actually were the opposite to what I was expecting to experience from business coaches, because I've experienced, the hard sell, the fear-based mongering that people do. And then I got to experience you, Vanessa. And so listeners, when you experience someone who actually really deeply cares, it comes from the core of their veins. And we were just having a bit of a chat about this just before we jumped on this podcast. And I said, let's do this line around, vulnerability and honesty and care. And that's what I got to experience from you, Vanessa.
The interesting thing, and thank you so much, I'm so honored by that. And I've had that feedback a lot. And I think it comes from, I have this belief that we have to honor ourselves. We have to honor others, but we cannot honor others if we do not honor ourselves. And then we can honor a process, right? That allows us to facilitate somebody feeling safe and supported and served in a sales in a sales flow. However, if I script it out for somebody, say this, do that, it's the come from that matters. And fascinatingly, back when I feel like part of my journey of to honor myself so that I can honor others, believe it or not, started back when I was in grad school. I was in the MBA program, and next door was the counselor's school. And the counselors had to get hours and hours of therapy in order to be able to get licensed. And so us as students at the university, we would get free sessions, as many sessions as you want. Yeah, well, wow. Meanwhile, at the time I was dating my boyfriend, who's now my husband, 24 years, but I was dating him, and he had proclaimed his love for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am scared to say I love you back. Is this the right relationship? He comes from a bad example of a relationship, marriage example. I come from a family with a bad marriage example. Do we have a chance? Can we do this? And so when he proclaimed his love for me, he said, I love you. I did not say I love you back. Poor guy dealt with me saying thank you for 14 months. I did not say I love you back because that felt like such a big commitment. But I went to the counseling school to sort out, should I marry this guy or should I not? Is this a big mistake? And guess what was the first thing that the counselor narrowed in on? And believe it or not, we worked on for 2 years. That was my lack of boundaries, in particular with my relationship with my mom. And so I had to heal this part of me of trusting myself in such a way that when I say yes, I mean yes. And when I say no, I mean no. And trusting that I can be honest, that I can navigate difficult conversations. As a matter of fact, Tim Ferriss says that the most successful people in life are willing to have the difficult conversations. Back then, I was more of a people pleaser. I was afraid of being assertive, but I recognized that if I was willing to navigate those things and develop these skill sets that I didn't have before, I could hold the space for a prospect or for other people in life to have an honest yes or an honest no. And when it comes to sales, I truly believe that a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And so my job is to get in touch with what is that deep desire that somebody has. Can I honestly serve them with what I'm representing? If not, my job is to point them in the direction of what can serve them. As a matter of fact, I've had posts where Taki's like taken screenshots and sent them to me because somebody would say, I came onto this call expecting I would be sold by Vanessa, and I had a friend because she told me no, that they were not the right fit and pointed me elsewhere and gave me other resources because I truly want to serve people with what would serve them best. But when they have a deep desire for something to change, for something to be different, it's my job to support them with that I called it skited, scared and excited emotion and feeling that might come up for them, but not allow them to get in their own way. It means loving them and caring about them deeply, but without buying into their stories of limitation that they may have for them. And so it's the opposite of selling to pain. Because I've been in those exact situations as you've been in, Jason, where somebody has like literally, pardon my French, but made me feel so shitty that, and I knew it was as a means to try to get me to say yes, but I felt defeated. I felt like, how can I even come into this program and succeed because I'm seeing you as like going to be the rescuer, when in reality, I want to be empowered to be my own rescuer. And so therefore, I feel like that's not as powerful as supporting people to get real about what's not working about their situation, right? That might mean we get into some painful conversations, but ultimately selling to the vision of their best self, of their best life, and the courage it's going to take to step into that. And so that's kind of the come from that creates a space where those words, that process works, because we've got to get the come from right, our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with other people.
I love that. And this is what's so different about how you do what you do. And so listeners, it's so important to understand that selling is not a 4-letter word. It's a actually really, really healthy thing to do. And what we're talking about here, and I do this on my sales calls, is I just want to know that the person that I'm spending time with is we're going to get each other, and there's going to be this help and support, and then they can make a choice. And that's what I felt with you, Vanessa, is like, I felt like you were going to give me help and support. And then there was processes along the way to be able to do that. And now what I'm seeing here that I can see for you that you're obviously changing in your second run at this is that your ability to say yes and no, and being that people pleaser would have been your kidney burnout. So are you really aligned to just making sure that you're really clear, so this time around you don't burn your gas out, so you get that right this time?
Well, here's what's fascinating, right? We buy a story. And when in my coaching business, I was helping people to create their high ticket programs, to market and to sell them.
Yeah.
And I really believe we need to stay in our zone of genius. What was happening was I was working with a lot of beginner coaches, and they were hung up on the tech.
Yeah.
Couldn't get the tech. It would stress them out. And I'd be like, oh my God, like seriously, never mind. My team will do it for you. And so my rescuer self created this whole other business, which was around a marketing agency to do the tech for clients. That was absolutely the wrong move. I thought I was serving them when in reality, I was not being truthful to myself and trusting that if I did what was just in my zone of genius and wasn't letting the tail wag the dog and letting my clients dictate what my program and services should be, that it was a certain trust that I could really scale that business to where I wanted to, staying in my zone of genius. And ultimately, you know why we don't hold our boundaries? It's usually because there's a fear of losing something.
Yeah.
So I didn't hold my boundaries to staying in my zone of genius, and instead opened a whole marketing agency and running a whole team and all this stuff that ultimately led to my burnout, because there was a fear that I couldn't build the business that I wanted, staying in my zone of genius and just doing what I love most. And this is like a trap any of us entrepreneurs can get into. And so I would encourage the listeners, if they're ever in a situation where they're feeling resentful, something I learned from one of my coaches is that resentment is actually a gift.
Yeah.
Because it shows us where we're out of integrity with ourselves. If you start resenting your clients, if you start resenting your team, if you start resenting anything, pause and be like, okay, this is cool. This is feedback. Something's out of alignment. I am not saying no where I really mean no. What do I need to adjust and change? And so for years, I was in that role of trying to scale the marketing agency instead of honoring my no in that situation.
Yeah, I love that. And, I teach that in the academy as well, that, resentment is a key cornerstone for getting you to be aligned. And people don't understand that. Like, resentment is one of the most important key facets to make sure that you can see what you're doing is actually out of alignment. It's such a key component. And so it sounds like you've got this layer that you're going to be really focused on, making sure that you don't do that overcare, the rescuing, the people pleasing this time around. Am I right?
It's a practice. I've certainly not arrived at the finish line and am a master or guru of this. It's like I'm in the trenches with the listeners. Like, we get the opportunity every single day. We get to practice and say, no, my preference is this. And there's a misconception about boundaries where it can sound really rigid, but even like my husband and I, we've been married 24 years, and it's getting, what it is being clear about what you desire and not being afraid to ask for that, and to not in a demanding way, but like, for instance, the way it looks like with my husband and I, it might be I have a desire for something and I can say, honey, this would feel really good. Do you have it to give? And it gives him the opportunity to say, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, or to give you that. Or he might say, you know what? I don't have it to give. I'm not resourced enough to give it, or no, it doesn't feel good for me to give it. And then I can honor his no and go find another way to get that desire or need met. And that's what it really is honoring each other, being honest about what's true for us. And in those relationships where it's so intertwined, whether it's team or whether it's love relationships, or whether even with our children, that we're separate beings from each other and we can honor ourselves independently without enmeshing and abandoning ourselves. I remember the Enneagram is a powerful tool that has served me really well, because I remember the first time, and I'm an Enneagram 3, or that's what I'm most closely aligned with in the past. And what I love about the Enneagram is that you're not typed, because once you get to those healthier levels, you have access to all the types. And the Enneagram 3, the first time I read this sentence in my report, and it said, you are more in tune with other people's needs than you are your own, other people's desires, other people's wants, I broke down in tears, because I was not even pausing long enough to get clear. And meanwhile, I was going around and being whatever people needed me to be, whatever was the situation. Okay, I needed to be best and the star. And so therefore I would mold myself into what was most desirable in any circumstance, to feel loved, to get the have the recognition and the accolades as my props for knowing my value. But when you work with the deeper work, and we were talking about this before the podcast started, the deeper work of shame and these drivers that might be underneath, then you can accept more of those shadow sides of yourself that you might have rejected. You can pause long enough to get clear on what you want and not feel like, because it's a survival instinct that we feel like if I behave a certain way that threatens my connection with another person, our brain goes back and thinks we're going to be thrown out of the tribe. And so it's fear of loss of connection that has us adjust ourselves and not be true to ourselves and be more in tune with other people's needs, because ultimately we're just afraid of being cast out of the tribe and therefore not having that connection and those relationships that matter to us. It's all at a subconscious level.
Yeah, and I love this conversation, Vanessa, because having a conversation with, a sales guru, but we're actually really talking about personal development and connection, which is what we all really need. I remember when I was on Taki's group, I posted that business coaching or running a business is the biggest form of personal development that you'll ever do in your life.
1,000%.
And so when you're in this place and you're working with, and I just want to go back on what you said with your husband, which is so beautifully done. Like, you're putting in an offer, you're doing a sales call on your husband saying, hey,
that's true.
This is what I would like. But it was never a projection, hey, you need to supply this because I'm missing it. And I love the maturity, Vanessa, because one of the things in relationship, listeners, and we're just going to go a sidetrack here just because of what you said, is that if you expect yourself to get 100% from your husband or your wife, then you're clueless in relationships. You have to know that they can supply a certain amount. Then we can, as you said, you can start looking for that elsewhere. And that's what creates harmony in a really long-term marriage. So you basically just showed me how good your language is in your interpersonal relationship with your husband, the way that you speak, because you're not putting the pressure on him to give you what you need. You know that you're putting in the sales call offer can you do this? And then it's like he responds, and then if it's a no, you go, okay, I'll go and look for that somewhere else. And I think this is really important, listeners, to understand. This is all about sales, right? Everything that we do is a sales call. If we do it right, and if we do it with elegance, and we do it with a sense of integrity, then we're not putting the pressure and onus on the other person to actually provide whatever it is that they need to provide for us.
Well, and it translated to a sales environment. When we're enrolling people, it's like saying, I need this, I need your money, or I need validation that I'm a good coach. And your yes gives me that.
Yeah.
But when it's fulfilling our need and not being of service to what their need is, because I hold a belief that they might be a no right now, but you know what? I keep doing my work remarkably in the world. I keep shining. They'll be back. And I want them to have left that conversation better, whether or not they said yes to working with me or the person I represent. I want them to be left better so that they remember they have had a true shift that occurred in that relationship, a state shift, that they want to come back. It's safe enough, because one of the errors that people make in enrollment conversations is when the prospect says no, they make them wrong for it.
Yeah.
When the prospect ghosts them, they make them wrong. When the prospect says yes but doesn't follow through, they make them wrong. There's this need to self-protect that shows up by making the other person wrong. Well, what if they don't need to be wrong? It's okay. A certain person are not ready. Even if we know they're the perfect fit and we're the perfect solution, they're not ready. And to force our will on them is like coming to my husband and saying, no, you will meet my need for X, Y, and Z, when he doesn't have it to give. It's not right. He would be abandoning himself in order to provide that need for me.
Yeah, and I love that, because what you're doing is an offer. If we think about this in every situation that we do, you're putting an offer in that the receiver, as you said, is going to get that, and that's going to hit in their subconscious. They're going to ruminate over that, and they may be able to offer it later, and they may be able to buy you later. And this is why you never ever think that someone saying no is actually about you. It's about when you're thinking this way, you're actually providing your service. You know you're really good, Vanessa, at what you do. Obviously, because you're headhunted all the time, people always want a piece of you, and you've got that nature, you've got this amazing magnetism. So you're providing this opportunity for a long-term relationship, which is very, very different than you need to buy me now. And if you don't buy me now, then there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with them. We do it either way, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, let's look at the grand scheme of things. This life is not that long. We interact with each other. We come into encounters with humans. Like, why not let each one of those encounters be where we leave people better?
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be when we enroll them in our service. Like, we all have these ambitions, especially coaches, consultants, people who are doing healing work and have tools that help people. We want to change the world. Well, what if the changing the world into those encounters? We're changing the world with each of those encounters. When I had a lady, I posted my article that you reached out to, that one article of me sharing openly about my life in a recent story. I created 3 podcast interviews, a stage speaking opportunity, and a client who said, I couldn't remember your name, but I remembered how I felt when you enrolled me in that such and such program. Can we connect? And she didn't even know that I ran a sales agency. She just knew I had enrolled her in that program. And then boom, like that, she's like, okay, I want your team to sell for me.
I love that. And this is where things are really different. Let's go to that post, actually, because we were talking about this off air around being vulnerable and being honest. And quite often in the business world, I know I've done this. I remember, I ended up in the psych ward. You probably don't know about this, Vanessa, in 2000. And I spent I didn't tell anybody that I'd been in the psych ward. I'd run my business successfully, started it in 2001. I was too ashamed to let anyone know what had happened because I was a therapist and I didn't want anyone to think, God, this guy is cuckoo. So he is not worth my, I'll lose everything. And then in 2012, 2013, I said, hey, I'm going to let a bunch of people know my story, let them know about me. And I never, ever let anyone know about me because I was too ashamed, right, about what happened. And I opened the story and said what had happened. And every single person was in awe. And what I thought was going to happen was everyone was going to leave. Everyone felt I was normal and it was okay. And from what it made actually me more special to the people. And it's really, really interesting when you think being vulnerable is you're going to lose everyone. But what you end up really doing, this happened with your posts, is you end up gaining people's truths, because underneath every single one of us is a story from hell somewhere. And that was my story from hell. And I was so scared of anyone getting to know that I'd gone crazy, and I did. And I told this amazing story, and it's one of those stories that people go, thank God, because now I know how to deal with broken brains. I know how to get people off the canvas. I know how to stop people from suiciding. I had everyone with my problems come and follow me, and I knew exactly how to transition them and get them moving. Now, you had this experience just recently where you shared your vulnerability that has created something. And I think this is really missing, listeners, because people don't feel they can share what's really going on. And when people come to see me, they quite often tell me everything is written on my forehead. I'm going to tell you all the things that I tell nobody about. And I have that ability to just land people. And you've got that too in you, Vanessa. You've got this calmness about you that will just hold space. So tell us about your vulnerability post and what that's done by being really, you.
Yeah, maybe we can share the link for the listeners so they can read it directly. But basically, I could not have written this story years and years and years ago without digging into, as I shared earlier, and it came from a workshop that I was at. This was one of the most transformative workshops I was at, that one of my friends said, Vanessa, dive into the deep end. Don't hold back. And so I show up at the event and everybody has to introduce themselves. And I was dealing with some real shame stuff, like decisions I had made, things I was facing, and I was disappointed with how I had handled them. And I just showed up at the front of the room and I laid it all out. I literally felt naked in front of the group. And I thought, everybody is going to look down on me. They're going to think horrible thoughts about me. But one thing I committed to was I was not going to share any of the things that I thought were valuable about me. I was not going to share how I impacted people's lives. I was not going to share my accomplishments. I was not going to share what I was up to in the world. I wasn't going to share any of that. I was just going to share this crap that was eating me up inside. And in that nakedness emotionally, the fascinating thing occurred over the course of that retreat. It was 5 days long. And we played all these different, personal development tools. It was very experiential. And at what I felt, what I experienced was feeling loved, appreciated, valued, even though my most ugly parts, air quotes, ugly parts, were being seen. And I realized that my whole life, and nobody can see me because this is an audio, but I'm hiding half of my face. I felt like I was hiding half of myself. Like, just look at this side over here that I'm proud of and these awesome things about me, but no, don't look at these other parts of me. But at this event, I was showing just that side. And at the end of the event, they had to choose a leader. They chose me. I'm accustomed to being chosen as a leader, but I thought it was for my good qualities, not for these crappy ones, right? And they were like, Vanessa, you have a work to do in the world. And all of a sudden I was feeling the same kind of like affirmation that I had felt in my only partially seen self, but now it's like all of me in this darkness and everything was being seen, and they were still saying that. And I realized that I was the one that was holding back love because I wasn't allowing myself to be fully seen. And the Enneagram, as a matter of fact, helped me also to see that the healthy side of the Vanessa, who's embodied the 3 at the time, which could be like a chameleon and be whatever's needed in the moment, that the superpower was authenticity. And it's not like an authenticity. I believe there's a book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote that's called Blink. I believe people can sniff out authenticity. It's like a blink of an eye. It's a subconscious thing. Like, yes, this aligns, this feels true, or no, something feels off. And this is what he talks about in the book, where people could walk up to a sculpture and in an instant be like, nope, it's not the real deal. And they'd be like, how'd you know? They're like, instinctually, subconsciously, they just knew. And I think that humans are like that. And I feel like that's why in sales conversations, we've got to treat the other person with dignity and respect. Like, even if we think we can get something past them intellectually, at a subconscious level, they're feeling it. They can feel whether they're safe. They can feel whether you're going through the motions. They can feel whether you're really for them. They can feel whether or not you have an agenda. They can feel whether or not you're being manipulative and being strong-arming them into something that's against their will. They're feeling that. So let's give them the respect and dignity that as a human, even if they can't articulate what they're feeling it. My job is to help them get past the feelings that are their own fears, their own limitations. But if they're feeling that from me, I have failed them because I'm not showing up with clean energy of service to them. And so the only way I could have written that post, which includes a story about me sharing that after this burnout, our landlord and my business had gone down. I was struggling. I had told my husband, I have got to pay my team. Do we have any money in the boys' bank accounts? I felt like I was a mom breaking my son's piggy banks to pay my team. And he's like, there's no money. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get a cash advance. I'm going to pay my team. And then our landlord approached us and he's like, guys, I need you out of the house. Or do you want to buy it? And I was like, I cannot even think about this. I'm on the verge of burning out again. I haven't even fully recovered. We're not interested. I didn't even take a moment to listen to what he was saying. He was selling us the house at 70% of its value. But I was like, no, I cannot think about this. I don't have capacity. Meanwhile, of course, he offered it to somebody else and they're like, we want it. So we had to be out in 30 days. And I felt like because of that burnout that I had, I was already feeling like I was crawling on my hands and knees and trying to race a marathon. And I just felt like somebody said, yo, stand up. We got a 100-yard dash we've got to run because you got to find a house, move, and get reestablished within the next 30 days. And I started looking and I realized there were no houses on the market for the price range we were paying. They were doubled. We'd been in that rental for 7 years. And we had a rental in another city. I thought, oh my God, we're going to have to move back, transport our kids an hour away. Or I thought, well, we can move into the basement of my mother-in-law. But again, that's an hour away from the kids' school. And it triggered all this stuff of when I was a kid. Our landlord wanted to move back into the trailer that we were living in. And so we were, in essence, like homeless. We didn't have anywhere to live. And we were friends with some pastors who offered their church, which was empty, for us to live in. And we were living in the classrooms. We had our bunk beds, our little kittens that were born in that church, but there were no showers in that church. So we had to get a pool pass at the local university pool so we could go to the pool and go to the locker rooms and shower. And I was in middle school at the time. And so when the bus would drop us off, that was right in front of the church, I would get off of the bus and I would pretend like I lived in the neighborhood where all the kids lived. And I would walk over there towards the neighborhood, right past the church, hide out for a little while, let the bus leave, let all the kids get in their house. And I would go back and go to the church and try to sneak in so nobody would see me. And so I did not realize at the time that when the landlord was like, you need to get out, it was triggering all this stuff and all this shame and judgment. And like, Vanessa, you told yourself you would never let that happen like it did when you were in middle school. Look at how you've created this situation. It's your fault. You didn't take care of your health and pay attention to the warning signs. Now you're in this situation where your family's disrupted and you don't have a place to live. And what are you going to do? And my friends who cared about me and my husband could tell I was not doing well. And they're like, how can we help? And I was like, listen, just leave me alone for a while. I'm in complete protest of reality. I'm grieving the situation. I'm angry. I'm frustrated, but I know myself well enough. And let's call this stage 1. I know that in time, I will go through a stage where, okay, we buckle it up. We do what's needed. We go into survival mode. It might require some disassociation from reality in order to plow through. I've had a lot of that practice in life growing up, had challenges. So that disassociation would serve me just to survive. Then third stage would be recognizing like, okay, so this is the hand that you've been dealt. What do you want to do about it, Vanessa? Are you going to be a creator of your circumstance, or are you going to be a victim to your circumstance? And realizing, okay, this is our situation. And then the fourth stage is where I can look back and I can see it was all orchestrated for my good. That the hand of God, that's how I refer to it, was in it all. If I would have just trusted that I was being taken care of, I would not have protested reality. So I was just like hunkering down in stage 1, leave me alone. I want to be angry. I want to blame our landlord. I want to blame my husband that he wasn't in his right mind because I wasn't in mine. And all of that until one of my clients had me review her webinar. And in the webinar, I learned, now I don't know the validity of this, but it served me to learn this. She said that gratitude had a higher frequency than even love. She said gratitude had a frequency in alignment with enlightenment in her webinar. And I was like, is this true? And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to go through stages 2 and 3 to get to gratitude in stage 4. I need to choose this now if I'm going to change my circumstances. And so I just started thinking, okay, we're booted out of our house. You know what? The boys I have 3 boys. They're always coming to my room to go to the bathroom. So if we're going to move and have a new house, like, what do I want that house to be like? I want it to have windows everywhere. Just like call it a house, but it's just windows everywhere. A bedroom for every single kid, a bathroom for every single kid. So 5 bedrooms, an office that's not a little crammed in the corner because I had my business to run. I want it to be beautiful, an inspiring space to do inspiring work. And I just started to envision that this was a possibility. And I found this house. It was listed on a Thursday. I called the landlord. I go, let's go. And I go, I want it. Offer him full price. And my son was like, Mom, we can't afford this house. And I was like, well, we don't say we can't afford it. We just say, how can we afford it? Let's just go through with it. Let's make the offer. Well, when we made the offer, it was accepted because we didn't have a contingency. Blessing, right? I didn't have a house to sell. We were getting out of a rental. And our offer was accepted, except that when we started the financing, they were like, Vanessa, your credit score, which was during my burnout, had dropped to 550 points from a high 780 to 550 in a matter of months. I did not have time in 30-day turnaround to turn that credit score around. And now all of a sudden they're like, if you want to move into that house, you have to have $100,000 in cash. And I, coming from having previously felt this, energy loss and adrenal burnout, I was in this creation gratitude state. I had renewed energy. I had focus, creativity. And I was like, okay, let's fill a workshop. I'll sell some VIP days. And no kidding, we came up with the $100,000, moved into the house, and all of that occurred during that whole season. And I shared that story. And as a result of, in the past, I wouldn't have shared about my credit score. In the past, I wouldn't have shared about what I went through in middle school. In the past, I wouldn't have shared, on the outside, everything looks great, but like my business dropped from 60 to $7,000 a month. I wouldn't have shared those things because I would have wanted to portray an image of how trying to control what people thought of me versus being like, this is who I am. I'm not my credit score. As a matter of fact, there's a coach that I've hired who's been through bankruptcy. She's a business coach and a finance and a legal expert. And I'm like, girlfriend's been through bankruptcy. She doesn't have to be ashamed of that. Like, she's navigated where I would never want to go, but that I can learn from her. Just like when you went into the hospital, like there's something to be learned. Like somebody who's honest, they got to that state and they're like, I got to do something different. And I think that sharing that vulnerably, which I didn't have any other agenda in writing that post except to share them in my 10-year anniversary of my coaching business. And I was like, I'm just going to share lessons that I've learned along the way. And that was one of the lessons about the way to get through the storm is to embrace gratitude sooner. And I had no idea of how it would resonate with people and create this, I didn't have a call to action. There was nothing to sell. But meanwhile, had all these people reach out. Can you speak on my stage? Can you speak on my podcast? Yeah, we want to hire you. All of these opportunities came from simply just sharing something in a way that vulnerably and authentically connected with people and created a level of trust.
That's the big key here, Vanessa, is what you're just talking about at the end, is that when you're being your true self, all warts and all, every single thing, other people resonate with that one word. And the more that we're vulnerable listeners to our problems and our greatness, we become more whole. And, it's so inspiring what you're saying here, Vanessa, because this is the journey that we all need to be on in life. Because if we want to change this planet, and I see what your nature is, you're a planet changer. The way that you think, the way that you orchestrate, the way that you deliver is a person who wants to inspire people. The only way to do that is to be whole. I have things that I have not solved yet, and everyone comes to me. I'm psychic. I can see the future. I can see the past. I can see so many things in people, and I'm so brilliant at it. The thing is, I've got problems. And what I do in our academy is I share them, and I let people know I've cried in front of everybody. I've shown my vulnerability where I'm in quotes broken in the moment. And what this has done is it allows me to be a vulnerable based leader, which is what you're talking about, is being more real. So people can actually start unraveling and stop hiding their stuff from view, because the stuff from view, God. I talk about this, like shame in our academy work is hiding your most brilliant self. It's the most important emotion that reaches enlightenment. Shame, sorrow, depression, despair actually locks you into your highest vantage point when you look at them in a different way. And you appreciate those things in your moments, as opposed to looking and saying, okay, let's just pack that down under the covers, put that in the suitcase, don't let anyone see it, and hopefully it ceases to exist. But it just doesn't, does it?
No, we're all just trying to human. We're just all trying to human better. We're just, and I had a very painful relationship with my mother, which is why when I went to the counselor in college, she's like, let's work on these boundaries issues with your mom. And I had a very painful relationship with her where her words were cutting and destroyed my character. Like it wasn't words that were being critical about my behavior. She would, I always, the analogy I give is if I had a shield on, if I was in a knight's armor, my mom knew how to get the sword, go in through the shoulder, and get in behind the breastplate and pierce through my heart. She just had this ability to do that. And for a really long time, I was hurt and I didn't want to be around her. And when she passed, I went through a lot of healing and I realized that she was just acting out of her own pain. All the things that she was doing to me was her own pain. And it just gave me so much compassion to the inner critic she was living with, to the unsatisfied, unhappy person that was inside of her that just came out and attacked the rest of us. And Brene Brown says, she admits, she's like, I get scary when I get scared. And we all have a capacity, a propensity where we can, like for instance, I know this pattern with my husband. We've been married 24 years. My sentence in my head is, if it's going to be, it's up to me. He's discovered his sentence is, I don't matter.
Yeah.
He was the youngest of 5. I was the oldest of 5. Well, those play together really beautifully. We subconsciously attract, right?
Yeah.
And so where it shows up for me, where I get scary when I'm scared, is when I was going through those financial challenges. I just wanted, when I was in that stage 1 protesting reality victim state, I just wanted somebody to come and rescue me. I wanted him to rescue me. I don't want to have to worry about the finances because I've been primarily the breadwinner in our relationship. I was protesting that. I don't want that role. Can you do it? Can you just like be Ed McMahon and like bring a check and like change this whole situation? And if we recognize that we all have our broken parts, and if we can be compassionate to the broken parts in ourselves, we can be compassionate to the broken parts of others and be like, oh, I wonder what's going on for them that they're showing up that way. I wonder what's occurring for them that had them show up that way. And there was a quote, a yogi who quoted it, can't even pronounce his last name, but he says, as soon as you can recognize that people's behavior or rejection of you has nothing to do with you, but it's their relationship with their self or their state, then you won't be triggered. Like, these are my own interpretation. What he said, you will no longer be triggered or activated by what they do because you realize it really doesn't have anything to do with you. And if we can be more compassionate to the way other people are showing up, compassionate for ourselves, like, hey, I'm being scary when I'm scared. I'm projecting my stuff onto you. I'm asking you to do something that you're not resourced to, and I'm taking offense to it. I'm trying to enroll you in something and you say no, so I feel like my program and I'm rejected. If we can recognize these dynamics that are occurring, we can honor and respect other people for who they are and realize, like, we're all on our journey to wholeness.
100%.
We're all on our journey.
And look, I just want to put a big call out appreciation for your mum. And the reason why I'm saying this is it's turned you into a beautiful, kind, caring. So you've done what people can do when you've had your experience. You could either be the same or you do what's called the law of opposites. So you learnt how not to be thanks to the way your mum treated you. So it's turned you into the most beautiful, kind, loving and caring person imaginable. And so I really appreciate what your mum did for you to help you become the person that you are today. And this is when we look at our past and we go, oh, thank God this person did these things because they made me the person that I am. And that's what true appreciation does. And then that person doesn't own you anymore, because they've given you the gift of who you are as a human being. And Vanessa, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered today and being really, really vulnerable. And listeners, I would really implore you to find her, get the lessons of what you need to do with sales, because she's a guru at sales. She sold me kindness and I bought it. And this is what I want you guys to really understand. Sales is not a dirty word. It's a really important word where everything that we do is all sales, every single thing. And when you have an attitude like Vanessa and the way that she approaches, she's the type of leader that everyone needs to listen to and understand and comprehend, because she's not just selling you sales. She's actually teaching you how to be a really good person, in my opinion. That's actually what I see you doing. You're teaching people and educating them how to be good people. That's what's uncovered today for me when I hear you.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're all good people. And it's just these protective measures, these lies, these stories we tell ourselves. Those are just layers that we're just taking off to get to the core goodness of who we are, where we don't have to become good. We already are. Let's just remove all those barriers of that shining through.
100%. So listeners, if you like this podcast, I'd love it if you could share it and give this to someone who really needs some help around their sales magic. I'm going to put all of Vanessa's details along with that post, tag link in the show notes, and jump in and get some help from this beautiful woman so you can change the way that you approach your business and your life in general. So thanks so much, Vanessa, for jumping on Uncovered today.
Thank you, Jason. Such an honor.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.